Hi, I'm Simon K. Jones, and you're listening to the latest chapter of Tales from the Triverse. The story so far: former detective Lola Stiles and her newfound rebel friends are looking to extract Professor Simova from a village called Tapu. Tapu, 3203, late frostfall. The moon crouched low to the horizon, mirrored in the swamp waters. Insects lay low, dots on the surface, aiming to avoid the attention of the skimming bats. The only sounds were the creaking of boardwalks and the trilling of frogs, deep in the reeds. "What happens now?" Lola asked, lying on her front to avoid giving away their position. She was with Pilpo and Dowler, holed up in the loft of an old watermill, looking out over the town from an open cargo window. Dowler crouched to one side, nodded in the direction of a small narrow side street into which they could see from their elevated position. "Lycazra goes to make the deal. Hopefully everything goes according to plan. We get the location of Simova, retrieve him, and get out of here." "And if it doesn't go to plan? Nothing ever goes according to plan, right?" Pilpo, lying on the other side of Lola, rubbed her thumb and fingers together excitedly. "That's when we bust some heads. Right, Dowler?" "What worries me," Dowler said, ignoring her, "is the city guard being here. They're a long way from home, which means Simova knows something seriously important." Lola nodded, squinting against the dark. The moon was too low to afford much useful light into the crevices of Tapu. "Which makes it all the more critical we get him. He never struck me as the revolutionary type. I don't see him as a troublemaker." "You said that Gina claimed he was wanted for inappropriate behaviour towards students." "Yep." Dowler snorted, having to suppress a laugh. "Yes, we can say with some certainty that the Brulian City Guard would not normally concern themselves with such matters, especially if it involved travelling several hundred miles to retrieve the suspect." "Maybe," Pilpo said, "maybe he knows something about the Chancellor or the faculty. Something incriminating and so bad they wanted to get rid of him. Something really juicy." Shifting her position, trying to stop her arms from going to sleep, Lola chewed on her lower lip. "Seriously though, what's the plan if it all goes to shit?" "Lycazra can take care of themselves," Dowler said. "Christian likely already knows the position of the city guards. I can take out a few from here, getting close if I need to. Worst case scenario, we fall back and get support from Slava, Maxim and Yana at the rendezvous out of town." "And Zlati," Pilpo said. "Sure, and Zlati," Dowler said, not really listening. Wriggling closer, Pilpo tilted her head towards Lola's. "Me and Zlati go way back, you see. Way back." "How did you get involved with all this?" Pilpo's eyes sparkled as if she'd been waiting to tell that particular story. "Well, I was in the employ of a doctor years ago now. That's how I learned so much about medicine. He got me to help out. Unpaid, obviously. I'm a city ain't far, that's how it goes. It was a roof over my head. Anyway, one day, I meet this young girl at the market." "Can you keep it down?" Dowler glared at both of them. "This is supposed to be a covert mission?" Reducing her voice to a whisper, Pilpo moved yet closer, until Lola could feel the breath from her mouth on her ear. "So, I meet Zlati, who's a worker in another family, but she's treated really badly, like really badly, which is when I started thinking differently about a lot of things. We decided to get out, and then on the road met this amazing woman called Larissa. She convinced us to try to get through the portal to Mid-Earth, away from all this." Larissa. That name seemed familiar to Lola, triggering an old memory from years earlier. A case, perhaps? One she'd done at the SDC with Clark? In fact, now that she thought about it, it might even have been that first case. The memory was jogged free. That Larissa. It couldn't be. "Anyway," Pilpo continued, "we almost made it, but customs on the other side cranked open the container we were in. Me and Zlati got fast-tracked back to Palinor on a deportation deal, and I never saw Larissa again. She wasn't sent back with us, so I like to think that she made it out somehow, found a life on Mid-Earth, maybe in London, living all fancy with a family and a job." Pilpo sighed contentedly at the idea. Lola had to tell her the awful truth, of course, but it wasn't the time. When they were back at camp, then she'd have to explain all she knew about Larissa's fate, that she was sold into the sex shops in the Barrel until she was murdered. Feeling nauseous, Lola was unable to think of anything to say in response, so only nodded and smiled a thin smile. "Here we go," Darrella said. "Stop talking. Eyes front." She pulled her hood and mask up, her eyes narrowing. As the team's Koth, it often fell to Lycazra to be the figurehead, the dealer, the negotiator. Sending a Koth into a bad situation tended to result in the Koth having a higher chance of survival than an Ainfa or human, given an even playing field. It was night, which would be suppressing any magical output from mages. Not a problem for a Koth. Their arms could rip a head clean off a body any time of day. Plus, they could fly away if needed. Besides, they weren't alone. Christian would be nearby. Darrella was up in the eaves somewhere. Pilpo wasn't entirely useless, and the newbie human would at least stay out of the way until they had eyes on Simova. It should have been simple, right up until they'd spotted Brilliant guards in the tavern. That had been unexpected. The rebellion was a splintered affair, despite Christian's and Lycazra's best efforts, comprising of many independent cells and unaffiliated groups. It kept the movement agile and almost impossible to quell, but it also made for communication challenges. A cell from the north had acquired Professor Simova and was due to hand him over, but such events were not without ego. They would want recognition or payment or both. It was an unfamiliar group that they hadn't dealt with before, which made Lycazra nervous. Unvetted could mean trouble or incompetence. The temperature had dropped, even while the humidity remained at maximum. Lycazra had never much liked the swamps. The damp got in under their scales and plates, which could become rapidly very unpleasant if not managed. She'd read the horror stories. The sooner they made the exchange and got out, the better. Movement at the end of the alley. Human male, with their hands in their pockets. They approached to within a few feet, keeping a respectful distance. "Little dark for a midnight stroll," they said, the first part of the agreed handshake. Lycazra sized up the human. He was slight of build, though carried himself as only someone physically confident would. "It's quieter when everybody is asleep," they said to the man. He nodded. "Better to see the stars." The man seemed nervous, which wasn't unreasonable. "Brilliant city guard are here," Lycazra said. "We should complete as soon as possible and go our separate ways." "Agreed." "You have the package?" "In a warehouse by the docks." "You're sure you can keep it secure? We've gone through a lot to get it here." Lycazra smiled. "This isn't our first go-around." "You got your whole crew on this?" An odd question. "Enough to see it done." The man nodded. "Very well. Come with me, I'll take you to the package." He led Lycazra out of the alley towards another area of the village, closer to the water, where the narrow streets and walkways gave way to a more open area, presumably where cargo could be loaded and no doubt a hive of activity during the day. Torches were lit, casting a flickering illumination over the dock and the water beyond. "It's just in here," the man said, indicating a darkened doorway into a warehouse. "Go ahead." A bird whistled from somewhere up high. Lycazra paused, took a step back. "You first." The torches flickered, the flames bending towards the man. Lycazra felt as if a giant hand had gripped them, constraining their wings. The man removed his hand from his pocket, revealing a lantern strapped to his wrist, an intense fire burning within. There was a flash from the roof of one of the buildings, and a dark figure leaped down, a short blade in one hand aimed at the neck of the mage. Lycazra felt the grip around their body weaken as the mage spun to face the attacker, the blade sliding off an invisible barrier and sending the new arrival to the ground, where they rolled into a crouch. Christian, always watching, had arrived, though a little later than was comfortable. Taking the opportunity, Lycazra spread their wings and thrust into the air, simultaneously bellowing a jet of plasma at the mage. As Christian flicked another blade from its sheath, the mage darted backwards to avoid Lycazra's fire. There were shouts and the sound of doors banging open, and then the dock was swarming with city guard. Lycazra sighed. It was going to get messy. Thanks for listening. You can leave a comment and find lots more at simonkjones.substack.com.